Well, hello and welcome back to NorCal 715. I have the Govideo for part 2. DVD repair this time. It will load, and it will try to read the table of contents, and it just can't ever read the table of contents. It'll sit there endlessly trying to read the table of contents. So I think I know what the problem is, and we're going to try to address that and get it repaired. We have the VCR unit repaired on the last video, but there's still a problem with the DVD mechanism, and I suspect, once again, maybe some bad capacitors in the power supply causing a secondary problem. I noticed on the VCR, when you initially power the unit up and try to put a tape in, the front panel buttons have no response whatsoever. You have to stop, turn it off, turn it back on, and then you get a front panel response. So I think maybe there's a couple of soft capacitors in the power supply that we'll go ahead and address since I have the DVD mechanism out, because the power supply lives back here in the corner under the DVD unit. So we're going to go ahead and pull the DVD mechanism out of this and address the issue of why it won't read the table of contents. So let's get started. Now we'll go ahead and unplug this one connector right here. Now before I unplug the cable from the DVD player, I'm going to look and see if there is a provision for a solder bridge on the DVD mechanism. Usually there is, to protect the laser diode, and there it is. So this little solder pad right here, we need to put a solder bridge across that to protect the optical pickup from static damage before we remove the connector from the DVD mechanism to the main board. There we go, got a solder bridge on it, so it's safe. It can be removed without fear of ESD, electrostatic discharge, across the optical pickup. So now we can safely remove this connector, and the DVD mechanism is completely free. So now that I've got the DVD mechanism out of the unit, I need to remove the tray, and it's in the closed position, so I can't. So flipping this unit over, I see this little slide mechanism here. I'm just going to slide it over to the right, upside down, and then I can go ahead and pull the tray out, but it still won't come out. So I have to release these two tabs, one on each side, and then the tray will come completely out. So what I need to do is get this mechanism completely out of the unit. So to do that, I need to release these two tabs on the side so the mechanism can drop out and I can take it completely out of the unit. Now it can be lifted out completely. We've added the shorting jumper so I can safely disconnect the optical pickup lead completely. And then we can unplug the other flat ribbon cable that connects it to the chassis. We'll set that aside and I'll show you what I found here. So remember in part 1, the VCR repair, we found a cracked plastic gear. Well, take a look at this. As I turn this, it comes to one spot right there and it stops. And if I rotate it more, we get another stop. So it might be hard to see on the camera, but right here there's a crack in the gear. So these two teeth right here are actually farther apart. You can actually see the spacing is much farther apart than the rest of the teeth. So when it asks to move, it gets up to that spot and then it jams in that gear and it has to be overcome with a little bit of load. So what we're going to do is take that gear off, and I'm going to very carefully wallow out the inside of it so that it slips loosely on the shaft, and then we'll apply a little dab of hot glue and glue it back into place on the shaft, and it should be good to go at that point. So let's go ahead and just pop the gear off. It just slides off very easily, and it's off completely right now. There it is right there. The crack is in between those two teeth. So what we need to do is make this not be a snug fit anymore. So we'll wallow it out so it fits loosely on the shaft, and then we'll fill it with hot glue, and the teeth will come together at that point. And then it should still have a good bond to the motor shaft. So let's see if it fits loosely now. Wow, pretty close. Let's take just a little tiny bit more out of it. So it fits on there perfectly now with no binding whatsoever. I could very easily turn this so it would allow the sled mechanism to move freely at this point. So now all we have to do is add a bit of hot glue. We'll probably have to heat the motor shaft up very slightly to get the hot glue to take. And then we'll slide the gear back on it and we'll hope for the best. So now before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and pop off this clip. And we'll take off this gear. And we'll pull off that gear so there's no interference. But just to be safe, before I do this, I'm going to add a droplet of oil down to the bottom. Rotate the shaft a couple of times. Now we'll go ahead and get a Q-tip and sop up any extra oil so the brass bushing is lubed at this point. So I'm going to try to rough up the motor shaft so the hot glue has something to grab onto. Should be pretty easy to do. That looks good. You can see the motor shaft is kind of scarred up now. Alright, so I'm just going to add just the tiniest little drop to the end of the motor shaft. Now I'm going to take my hot air blower. Okay, so I've got the gear back on and it rotates very freely. I'm just barely moving it with the tip of my finger. There's no hard stops anymore like there was before with the crack in the gear. And I believe it should be on there very tightly with the hot glue. Let me try to lift it. Now I can actually lift the whole mechanism with it now. So let's go ahead and get the pretensioner on the optical pickup going right here. So slide this down just a little bit. And so they do that so there's no slop in this gear to the relation of the optical pickup. And now we'll put the clip back on. Moves very freely now, so let's go ahead and reassemble it. But first, let's go ahead and check the power supply capacitors to make sure that they're all okay before we put this all back together. So I will go ahead and reassemble the DVD mechanism before I check the power supply capacitors. So before we put it all back together, let's go ahead and clean the optical pickup. So I've got my glass cleaner and I'm just going to spray my cotton swab, just the tiniest amount on there. And now with circular motions and a very, very light pressure, I want to go ahead and clean the lens itself. Once again, I'm rotating the cotton swab as I'm wiping the lens. Now I'm going to take the dry end and continuously rotate the cotton swab as I'm drying the lens. Let's go ahead and clean off the turntable, get any gunk that's on there off. That helps the disc to lay completely flat so the focus tracking doesn't have to do too much work. Much, much better. Look at that, how clean it is now. The optical pickup is shining clean. Okay, so once again, I'm going to go ahead and reassemble the DVD unit in the DVD mechanism, and then we'll pull the power supply board out and check the power supply capacitors to make sure that they're all okay. So now to reassemble this, it's just the opposite of disassembly. Make sure that notch right here lines up completely. And then just snap the mechanism back into place. Now we can move this lever to make sure it loads and unloads correctly, and it does perfectly fine. We'll go ahead and plug this one ribbon cable back in. Alright, so I've got the power supply board out of the unit and I've unsoldered the positive lead on 34 out of the 35 capacitors. Now the only one I didn't unsolder is the main AC input capacitor right here on the bottom of your screen. So I'm going to get my ESR meter and I will ESR all 35 capacitors including the main AC input capacitor, and if I have any bad ones I will let you know. Well, here are the results. 12 bad capacitors. So any capacitor that I marked with a red on the top is defective and needs to be replaced. They all ESR'd out of tolerance. The other ones ESR'd within tolerance. So I'm going to go ahead and replace those, and this unit should be in tip-top shape, ready to go for a few more years. Okay, so here's a little tip. I have two capacitors on this board, these two right here, and they are 22 microfarad non-polar capacitors, which means they don't have a positive and a negative. They can be charged any direction on any lead. So you can apply the positive to one lead, the negative on the other lead, or reverse that, and they'll be okay with that. They're non-polarized capacitors. I don't have any 22 microfarad non-polar capacitors. So if that's the case, you can take two capacitors and solder the leads together, negative to negative, or positive to positive. It doesn't matter which way you go, but then you can actually make a non-polarized capacitor. Now these capacitors that I'm using are 47 microfarads at 25 volts. So effectively, once you've done this, let me take my meter out here and we'll do a microfarad test on the capacitor. It reads 25 microfarads, so it's about half of the value, because when you put two capacitors in series, the value is cut in half, 25.2. And once again, that's 247 microfarads at 25 volts. So if you had, let's say, a 100 microfarad non-polar capacitor, you could take two 220 microfarad capacitors and put them positive to positive or negative to negative, and you'd have a 110 microfarad non-polarized capacitor at that point. So I hope that helps. Alright, so I've got all the caps that were marked defective replaced, and I'm ready to put it back in the unit, and we'll give it a go, see what happens. Now what's interesting is these part numbers right here look like Samsung part numbers, in addition to the part numbers on the transformer. So it really looks like this unit was designed and built by Samsung. It just carries the Govideo name on it. Okay, so I have the DVD mechanism plugged in, the laser is connected. I don't have the motors connected yet. We'll do that in just a moment, but I want to go ahead and unsolder the solder bridge that I put in right here. So I should be able just to wipe it away. Okay, so you can certainly see the two connections there, not bridged any longer. So let's go ahead and flip it over. We'll reconnect the switches for the loading motor, and we'll plug it in and fire it up. Alright, so I have the power supply board back in it, the DVD board mounted back up to it. So let's go ahead and get this DVD player ready. AC on, power on, open, close. Now this is a DVD-R, a disc that I've recorded. Alright, here we go. We'll ask it to play. There's my radio equipment in my room when I was younger. My Atari 800 computer. Look at that mess. Oh my god, where's my Asteroids game, or my Donkey Kong game? There's Asteroids. There it is, my cocktail Asteroids I kept in my bedroom. My Panasonic monitor, I still have that. My Yaesu FT757, my antenna tuner, 949C antenna tuner over there. My Astron 35 amp power supply, still have that to this day. My high gain CD45-2 antenna rotor. Look at all that stuff. Oh my goodness, this is from 1988. I still have most of this. I haven't got rid of it yet. Well, there it is, all back together. The VHS plays, the DVD plays. It's ready to be shipped back to the customer. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video on the Govideo made by Samsung. If you enjoyed this video, please consider making a donation on my YouTube homepage with the PayPal donate button, or at paypal.me/norcal715. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and ring that bell to get future notifications. Remember, with your help, we can keep these things out of the landfill and out of the recycle bin. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.